Hey lovelies, today I'm going to be showing you how to make these really cute and simple DIY bridesmaids and best man and groomsmen, whatever you want to call them. You know those gifts that you kind of like home make to like propose to your bridal party? This is what I did. So this is using a whole bunch of frames I got for like dirt cheap because they were secondhand, no one wanted them. And that is wrapping paper as the background. Yes, I know. It's actually super easy to make and you can customize these in whatever way you want. So let's just get started and show you all of the stuff that you'll need. So I used some black card and obviously I got the frames. Like I said, it's always good when no one wants them because you can buy them for $3 each, which is nice and cheap. I found this amazing wrapping paper from Typo, which I fell in love with, and so I just had to use it. You'll need a chalk pen. You'll need, actually you don't need the glue unless you're making cards to go along with it, but you will need scissors. And I think that's about everything. Oh, and of course markers as well. Make sure they're whiteboard ones because we're going to be writing on that glass and then wiping it off. So to start off with, you just need to get rid of that stock standard picture. And of course for these I'm using 5x7 inch pictures because I just wanted something that people could then reuse if they wanted to, because that's a standard picture size. I know that frames aren't such a thing these days, but this is just what I wanted to do. And then I measured out around the outside of it. And I just used card as my first point of reference, so here I am just measuring up, making sure that everything is all accurate. And in hindsight I could have really easily just measured 5 inches by 7 inches, but you know, I like to do things the hard way sometimes. And so then we're just going to be cutting this out as well. It's really good to just make sure that you've got a nice crisp line just in case there's any discrepancies with the frames or like the backing of them, then at least this way you know that you've got something easy to reference back. And so I just popped that in there just to make sure it was the right size. And yep, it's looking pretty good. Then, oh look at that wrapping paper reveal. Okay, so one of those flowers I hate, but the rest of them I love, so I just decided to cut around it. Now this is the part where you do need to get a bit creative because you'll kind of need to visualize exactly how the picture's going to look on top of this wrapping paper. This is where I placed that card on top, and I just decided to like try and flip it so you can sort of visualize exactly where you want the flowers or whatever pattern you want, where you want that to be placed. And I just started trimming it up, basically, just trace around the outside of the backing. You kind of have a flip, have a look. Is that how you want it to look? I tried to go for like the more black and dark, moody, broody backgrounds for the boys, but for the girls I wanted to get those wide open peonies, you know, like the nice bright lighter colours, so it's a lot more pastel. I know not all guys like flowers, so you can of course like do 2 separate ones, but because like this is our wedding, we've got the same theme for everything, so I really wanted to keep that fluidity throughout everything. And of course like pink and purple are a couple of our colours, but you know, you can choose whatever colours you want. Then you just repeat this 6 times until you got all of the photo backgrounds that you want. And then of course we are just carefully cutting. This is where you do want to make sure that you are quite precise. You don't want to do any of that fancy stuff, you know, like when you have that amazing glorious feeling. We all know this, I hope you do. If you haven't experienced it, I'm very sorry, but you know, like when the scissors just glide through the wrapping paper, we're not doing that because that's when things can get a bit wonky, so we're just trying to be careful with this, nothing flash. And that's how they end up looking. And so just to test it out, I like to put it in the frame and just flip it around, see kind of how it would end up looking. Oh my gosh, grand reveal. Okay, that's pretty cute. Yeah, I like that. So then you can just keep going from there until you get all 6. And here's the boys reveal. So as you can see, it's a lot more moody and broody and dark. So that's the exact kind of look that I wanted. Nice and pretty and bright for the girls. And I wanted to just sort of see how the wording would look on it. So I had a couple of ideas. I decided between diagonal or if I wanted to make it go across, and just sort of figuring out where to put the dates. This is sort of where you can have a bit of a play around, just think things through, think what you think would look best. So the boys, as you can see, they're a lot darker, much more broody. And then the girls, there's a lot more floral action going on here. Nice and bright, which is just what I was after. And then this is where you get your whiteboard marker. I decided to use the blue side instead of black, so it'll be much easier. And this is where you can kind of get creative. You can play around with some freehand fonts, just sort of see the way you might want it to go. And then for the boys, I decided to go for something that's a bit more traditional. So, you know, like if Times New Roman was sort of the look I was going for, but obviously I'm not measuring any of this. Lots of you guys might be a bit terrified of that, but for me, I quite like just doing things freehand. And as you can see, it's on a slight angle, maybe. So, you know, you can always do those guidelines underneath or on top or below. And for the girls, I decided I wanted to do my typical handwriting. So this is just what I normally do, which is nice and twirly and bright. Can you even have bright handwriting? I never knew that, but apparently you can according to my brain. But that's exactly the sort of thing I wanted. I just want it to be like organic. I didn't want it to be too staged. And luckily you can always wipe this stuff away. So this is just where you want to make sure your guide is just the way you want your words to look. And of course, you can always trace things. So you know how people can come up with those beautiful fonts online, which you can download for free, just write whatever you want. You can do that and then just trace over the top of it with this. I decided to freehand it because that's just what I wanted to do. And then for these ones, I wrote the date down the bottom. It's not because I don't believe that people will remember the date, it's just because it's just a nice little token to just give them so then they can have this as a memento. Now the bridesmaids ones, I was struggling. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I was really struggling to make sure that the line was going right with my writing. This is apparently my freehand just cannot do diagonal. So this is what I mean. You just get a line guide, and I obviously still did freehand this, but it's pretty straight. It's kind of on point. And then just like when you're a child, you know, like you do the first letter and then the last letter, and then it all worked out. They all fit in there. I was so pleased. You just write away that guideline, and then you just write your date on as well. And to make sure the best men ones were kind of the same, I just had them side by side, and I really tried to like gauge by measuring it. On this camera angle you can't see that as well, but I was constantly like looking over and just double checking, making sure that things did fit, and luckily they worked out just the same. You might also be asking yourself why there are two best men. That's because they're best friends, and like we couldn't tear them apart, genuinely, we just couldn't. So we decided that there'd just be a part A and part B, but it all comes down to whatever preference you've got. This is how they're starting to shape up, so you can see they're looking nice and cool in those frames, and the ones for the girls, they're looking incredibly girly because you've got that handwriting as well. And I mean, I do think that of course like this is a slightly girly design with the floral in the background, but I think that you can definitely tell a difference between the guys ones and the girls ones. At least I can, but maybe that's because I was making them, but I still really like the design for both of them. Now is the part where you get your chalk pen, and this one is Uni Chalk. That was highly recommended at the stationery store, so I decided to just go with it. And this is why you needed to write on the other side of the glass, because you're going to have to write in reverse. So you really do need to make sure that the writing you've done on the first side is exactly how you want it, because I don't know about you, maybe you've got some mad skills, but I cannot write back to front. I am just not that talented. Actually, I'm barely talented at all, which is why I decided to do something that was simple like this for my bridesmaids and groomsmen gifts. So you just need to make sure that when you're doing this, it's much easier when you're just going in like the same lines as everything, and making sure that you're keeping your pen on a particular angle to make sure that fluid chalk comes out nice and easily. And you can sometimes find that there will be a bit of bleeding, so you just need to make sure that the glass is clean enough that you don't need to suffer from that. And when you're writing as well, it's the same as if you're left-handed or right-handed. You want to do it in such a way that your hand will not go over any of the stuff that you've done, because wet chalk is obviously still wet. You treat it a bit like paint. And then you can just go in and clean up. This is where I made a big mistake as well, because it's so much easier to do this with a Q-tip. So I decided to just stick with it, wipe off the front, and oh, that's looking pretty good. So once you're done with all of that, you can do a cleanup afterwards. Now for the girls ones, I actually found this to be easier to do because my hands, they're just used to doing like twirly motions as opposed to like straight lines and boring lines like that. So this was so much faster and easier for me to do because, like I said, it's kind of like my natural handwriting. I don't normally write in straight lines. So this was nice and easy, and because I'd written it so clearly beforehand, it was really fast work. And then this is where we're getting our first reveal of what it's actually going to be looking like. So I just grabbed one of the female pieces of paper. I'm just categorizing them as that, but you know what I mean, like the bridesmaids ones, the groomsmaids? I'm sure that could be a thing. Oh, there we go. And that's how it ends up looking. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And same with the groomsmen, just popping that backing on, making sure it's all nicely aligned. I think someone bought some very cheap frames, so this was a little bit frustrating for me to do. And then ta-da, that's how they end up looking. You just do the same, just wipe off that glass. Like, I just use some paper towels because I find that that gives like the cleanest finish. And here is where I really wanted to show you that Q-tip trick. So you see how the tip of it is so much finer? Oh my gosh, this makes such easy work of cleaning up any bleeding that might have happened, any little mishaps you might have had. You just go in there and just kind of like do a detail clean on everything. It's kind of like if you're patching up an eyeliner that's gone wrong, which is totally never happened to me, but you know, for those poor people that have to suffer from that on the odd occasion, it's the same sort of technique. You just go in there and you just sort of swizzle this around, and it honestly works so well at just getting the stuff off, which is another reason why I really like using the chalk, because it's not like using paint. It's so much easier and easier to wipe off. This is how they end up looking. I personally love them. I think that they really do set the tone nicely. They're all personalized because the wrapping paper is obviously so different. You can cut out different parts, you can use whatever you want as a backing, you can do whatever font you want, but then you've kind of got a consistent gift to give everyone. At the same time, you can write whatever personal message you want on there. Like, I did little cards, so you can see, and I just wrote something sweet to each person, saying why I really valued their time and really wanted them to be there with us on the day. And yeah, I love them, and I hope you do too. Please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.